Hi everyone, welcome to 21st Century Saints, our podcast and live stream series for members, those affiliated with and who have an interest in the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Going to just make clear at the top of this episode that we do not speak for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. However, Sarah and I are both members who care deeply about the Church, especially here in the UK, but we're also talking about what's going on around the world. Okay, so we haven't planned this chat ahead of time. We have no idea exactly how this is going to go, but we have just got some information tonight about some audio that we have. We've literally dragged Sarah out of bed. I don't even have my mic set up, so this audio is probably going to be a little bit rough and ready. I do have my sleepy face on. But, hey, the eyebrows did get done today, so at least you all have that. Okay, so while we're waiting for a few more people to join us, what we're going to ask you to do, because this is really, really important, is if you would mind sharing this video wherever you can. Now, we're just about to, if you could, wherever you're watching this, take a look at the comments. Now, I want you to feel totally free to leave this right now and go and click on the link that we've just put in the chat. So across all of our live streams, all of our Facebook page, on YouTube, on Twitter, and on Twitch. If you go into the chat, you can have a look at a link to a YouTube video that we're just sharing right now. So literally, stop listening to this, come back. It's important to listen to what we have to say about it, but the actual content itself is the most important thing. Now, we're going to give you just a little sneaky peek of what that the audio from this is going to sound like. So this has been shared. Now I'm going to take a huge liberty. I haven't even asked if it's okay to do this. I'm just going to play a little tiny clip of this YouTube video, just the audio only, because we really need you to go in and check out this video. So PD from Priesthood Dispatches, I'm just going to play this audio. Sarah, can you give me the thumbs up and just assure me that you guys can hear it, that it's coming through okay?
Yeah. It's awesome, funny, random, doesn't make any sense, but it's good. Hi everyone and welcome back to the channel. It's going to be a short video this time, and this video is all about a call I made to the LDS Church Abuse Helpline. It's an older call and wasn't made recently, and if you don't know what the abuse helpline is, then section 38.6.2.1 in the church policies and guidelines section of the handbook tells us exactly what it is. And it's a helpline set up around the world to help leaders deal with abuse. Leaders can call that number 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And here are some of the numbers listed below. The one I called was the United Kingdom. It says bishops and stake presidents. So I was ordained a bishop in 2007. Once a bishop, always a bishop. A couple of other things to know. First of all, the abuse case that I speak about is my own. So you'll see that I am uncomfortable making the call. You'll see it's uncomfortable to talk about it, but yeah, please bear with my weird, boring, scared-looking face. The handbook says that bishops and stake presidents can call the helpline when addressing situations involving any type of abuse.
Now we're going to just stop the audio there. That should give you a sense of what you're going to hear. So again, we're going to ask you, please stop watching this channel right now. We need you to go to the comments. We will share this in the show notes later. Please go and listen to that right now. With things like this, I don't know if they tend to stay on the internet. Just in case that's the case, would you go and check it out? It might be an idea for you to make sure that you have watched this, because the Mormon world is going to be talking about it. In the meantime, PD makes it very, very clear. Now, let me just talk for a second about PD. PD's a really, really good friend of ours. At times, we get asked a lot about how we're coping, being in a space where we are asking for leaders to do things that it seems like they don't always want to. It seems like it's not a priority for them. Obviously, this past few weeks, we're hearing the opposite. We're hearing, so much support that child protection is really important to our leaders. At times, it hasn't always felt like that, and it's taken a huge emotional toll. One of the most spiritual, kind, thoughtful, funny, constant supports to me, and more recently, as Sarah's joined the crew, to Sarah, has been priesthood dispatches. A while back, last year, actually, around about this time, I chose to hand back my temple recommend, and the calls that I was getting, messages of support and check-ins from PD to make sure that I was okay about my choice to do that, because he understood how much it meant to me, were incredible. PD's faith might not look like his Mormon faith used to, but he is a man of great faith and of great honour, and we just want to say we love you, PD, and we are honoured to be able to include your voice in our work. As you heard, PD is a former bishop who served in the United Kingdom. The way it works in church, once you're ordained, that's the title, that's the, you're always a bishop, right? We just don't tend to call people bishops. And PD doesn't come to church anymore. He's not been excommunicated. He just has chosen to disengage. He engages in his faith in other ways where he makes a really big difference. That doesn't always lead people right back into the church, but it certainly gives them space to be themselves. So you may or may not like PD's approach, sense of humour. We will absolutely always fight and stand with him about that. So yeah, PD is a bishop. He is also a survivor of abuse. And as he points out in this call, he is talking about what happened to himself. So he called the helpline to find out what would happen. What happens when people call the helpline? We're talking, this would have been a call that would have happened probably last year, I believe, around about the time when a lot of media were covering what was going on with Captain McConkie, what was happening in America. And so as a friend of ours, PD was deeply concerned about what's it like when you call the Safeguarding helpline here in the UK? Does it go through to Captain McConkie or what happens? So having had the experience of a victim himself, having survived, having been in a situation where he's had to support others, he wanted to find a bit more about what that was like. And so again, stop listening right now. Go and listen. I'm just going to keep on if I have to spam it every 2 minutes in the chat so you don't have to scroll back up. Go watch PD's channel right now. Like I say, it might not stay there for very long for whatever reason. Okay. Once you've listened and you come back, we're going to be chatting with the rest of the Brit Vengers this Sunday. Probably about this and some other pretty serious things that we have to tell you about. But in the meantime, Sarah, while this is still on the internet, you have just listened to the video in its entirety. So could you give us just an overall summary of what it is people are going to hear? And then what we're going to do is we're going to go through each of the stages. Because when I heard it, I'll be honest, I'm thinking, okay, do you know, I was expecting pretty bad things from the church, but he sounds like a really nice guy. The lawyer in the other end of the call sounds like a really nice man. I'm sure that a lot of members of the church in the UK will probably know him. We all know each other, right? We're always a step away from each other. Half of us are related to each other, right? So this is not in any way to impugn character. This is purely talking about someone who answers a call to the abuse hotline. Sarah, can you tell us what generally the content of the video is?
What we are going to hear is something that we only became aware of and only heard a very, very short time ago. And it's quite true. Literally 20 minutes ago, I was in bed. But this was so important, we needed to listen to it immediately. We are going to hear PD with courage and braveness, exposing his vulnerability and talking about his own abuse taking the role of a bishop and playing the real situation that happened to him as an 11-year-old boy when he was abused by a 12-year-old boy at church. And he is talking to the church lawyer about this real situation and asking for advice. What should I do? I'm a bishop. This 11-year-old boy has come and told me this. What should I do? And over months, we've been offering advice, guidance, information to the church about how to respond to abuse, about some of our concerns. And one of the things that we have talked about is it's great that the church have got an abuse helpline. We've also talked about the importance of having somebody that understands sexual offending very specifically and risk very specifically to inform some of the responses and information that is given. And it is not too extreme for me to say that I'm disappointed. I'm not disappointed at the individual person taking a helpline call, because I think he has done the absolute best that he can do with the training, the resources and the knowledge and the system with which the church has embroiled him. But I am disappointed at what has been the outcome of this call. Disappointed for PD that he's had to go through the pain of realising how his real abuse would have been handled by the church, and disappointed that this could be happening any day now to any of our children in our faith community.
Again, I'm going to ask you all to stop listening right now, to go, if you haven't tuned in yet, please go to the show notes right here, go into the comments right here on whatever medium you're listening to, go straight to PD's channel and please click on that video before you listen to this so that you have the whole context for what we're talking about. So just a reminder, if you have not yet watched, go right now, watch and come back. It is that important. You have to watch this first. We don't know how long this video will stay on the internet. Okay, Sarah, so the person who we've talked a little bit about the why the call was made. We've talked a little bit about the character. This is in no way designed, I would say, partly because I know PD, but also partly because you can kind of, I believe, see from the call, this isn't an attempt to sort of catch someone out. This was just to sort of find out what happens. I already pointed out, so the guy who answers the call, I feel like my response is the same response that most people in the church would sort of say about anybody. You know, he's a really nice guy who answers the call. He seems really, really friendly and someone who you could talk to, someone who, as a bishop, I think I would feel quite comfortable to talk to. Would you agree?
I think so. I think it's absolutely true to say that this guy is a good man. He's a good man with a good heart. And we know that the leaders in our church generally care deeply about children and do not want to see harm caused. They want to prevent harm. He's a good man. He certainly took his time listening to PD, an anxious bishop. I don't know really what to say. I'm a bit nervous about making this call. And he took his time to say, well, why don't we just take it from here, Bishop? And he took his time to give him an opportunity to speak, to share information. Also important to note, and this will become important towards the end of this conversation, that the helpline lawyer had PD's phone number given to him so he could return a call to PD, but he didn't have his name and the ward and the location that he was in, but he did have the means of contacting PD. That's
that is really important
that we know.
So he gave PD a little bit of information about his background.
He did. He shared his background. He shared his spiritual credentials. You know, he's been a mission president, stake president, Area 70 bishop. He shared that information with PD, which I think was good to give him some assurance that actually, you know, I know Mormonism. I know spiritual things. I can talk to you on that level. I think it was good he gave that background information. There was not any information given about his safeguarding experience. There was no information given about... Well, he did know. Actually, I suppose that's possibly not true, because he did say that he'd been manning the helpline for 20 years, but he didn't actually talk about his own safeguarding experiences. He did say he has 20 years experience of answering this helpline call. set up for bishops and leaders across the country. And he did verify with PD at the start of the call, are you a leader? And PD said, well, yeah, I'm bishop, using the fact that once a bishop, always a bishop. And then PD shared his story of what happened to him and received advice that I feel,
well, before we get into
what
that,
we would expect.
Yeah, again, this is the moment to stop what you're doing. Please go to PD's channel and listen to that video. It is really, really important. Then come back and listen to the discussion. Now, on the credentials, it might be something that we want to talk about later on, about the experience in safeguarding of people who handle the helpline. I think that might be something to discuss, maybe not tonight, a later time, because we want to make this quite brief. We want to make sure that all of the focus tonight is over on PD's channel. Now, our PD is in the chat tonight, so do reach out. Feel free to reach out to him if you have any questions. Also, please be respectful, but absolutely get over to that channel and listen to this video as soon as you can. Okay, I'm hoping we have an audience of only people who have watched the video. Okay, so like I say, come back or catch up or whatever you have to do. Sarah, before we talk, can you just quickly remind everyone about your credentials? How do you know so much about safeguarding?
I worked in the field of sexual harm, working with sexual offenders, adults, young people, children who displayed sexually harmful behaviour and committed sexual offences. I'm a qualified probation officer and social worker. I have now retired, therefore no longer use the title social work because it would be illegal for me to do that, as I'm now retired and no longer registered. However, I am a qualified probation officer and social worker with over 25 years experience, specifically in the field of working with victims, sexual harm in the voluntary sector, rape crisis, NSPCC, probation service, and within youth offending safeguarding teams within local authorities.
And you have been part of creating and shaping policies also in your career, is that correct?
Yes, I have. As part of my career, I've been responsible for helping to formulate and write policies and procedures around children who display harmful sexual behaviour, around working in part of multi-agency public protection units, which are joint police and probation units, to manage the risk of highest risk offenders in local communities. I've been responsible for helping people understand risk and understand what triggers risk and understand how they can have safe plans in place, and for therapeutic work with children and young people who've displayed behaviour.
I so just want to make it really, really clear then that, in my opinion and the opinion of Sarah's colleagues who've worked with her over a period of many years, of survivors, of church leaders and church members and the victims who have most recently been reaching out to us, whose stories we thank you for sharing and we honour. Sarah's experience, understanding and sensitivity in this area is what I can say is second to none. Sarah also is in the incredible position. She doesn't claim to sort of be the person that holds all knowledge. She refers in every case signposts to support. This is interesting because one of the things that we suggest in the church as 21st Century Saints, we highlight in our work there is this safeguarding procedure. Are you saying from what we're going to hear in this call that you wouldn't sort of see this as a great example of safeguarding?
I think it was a great attempt by the lawyer to put a bishop at ease and to give advice. However, there are significant gaps that would fall short of the standard that we would expect when we are talking about abuse perpetrated by a 12-year-old boy on an 11-year-old boy at church. And there is significant more urgent advice at the point of first contact that I believe was necessary to ensure that both boys, because we are talking about two children in this situation. We're not talking about an adult and a child. We are talking about two children that both need to, yes, the one needs to take responsibility for his behaviour, but there also needs to be some support around just why has this happened with a 12-year-old boy? Is he at risk himself? What should we be considering about that, as well as absolutely good quality care for the 11-year-old boy? And you've also got 2 sets of parents involved in this. And there should be urgent advice on how the parents are likely to feel, how they're likely to respond. My experience is if you talk to parents that their child has committed a sexual offence or sexual harm, they are generally absolutely horrified, panic-stricken, distressed, and they often will go in complete and absolute denial mode because of that fear, distress, shame. They can also sometimes, yes, they don't go necessarily through fear, shame. They can actually move to total rejection of the child who has caused harm.
Yes.
You may also find the child who's caused harm has been and is being abused at that moment in time, is in need of urgent protection.
So I'm about to hand the time over to Sarah to take us through this. Again, we've got, because we've got new people coming in case you haven't heard, we need you to go into the chat, go have a look at the comments. We have shared a link to a video which has just dropped on the internet, shared by our friends, Priesthood Dispatches. Before you listen to what we are saying, we need you to go and watch that video. It may not be on the internet for an incredibly long amount of time, so we would like to raise awareness of the contents of the video as quickly as we possibly can. So please go there, then come back, because we need to have a discussion about what's happening. We do have PD in the chat with us. So Sarah, child on child abuse is perhaps one of the most common risks in safeguarding in the church. It's one of the things that most, perhaps it's a more common scenario than perhaps other types of abuse that we don't tend to think about. We don't really like to think about. So this being reported to you in the first instance, can you walk us through the call and what you're seeing then?
Yeah, I think some of the concerns that I had about the advice that was given was that the advice immediately given to PD as bishop was, talk to the 11-year-old boy, ask his permission for you to share the information with his parents, do a home visit to the parents, share this information with the parents, and encourage the parents to report. If the parents were resistant to giving...
to who would they be reporting to?
Report to the, well, the information was given to the police on the 101 number. I would suggest it should be urgently reported to the local safeguarding team.
Yeah.
Because you have 2 children in need of safeguarding here, not just one victim. You have 2 children that need to be safeguarded in this scenario. So
every bishop in the United Kingdom should know who their local safeguarding board is and should have contact with them.
We have asked the church repeatedly to ensure that every chapel in this country displays information with safeguarding details of who their local safeguarding team is, with both the office numbers and out of office emergency numbers, and how somebody should report abuse if they become aware of it. So that information we have asked to be displayed in every chapel in the country. I don't think that has been done yet.
Yeah, so that's a really good point. We have, so the church isn't saying that you should be contacting your local safeguarding board. We are saying that. National charities say that. That's best safeguarding practice is you should be in touch with your local safeguarding board, and we would recommend all bishops do that. Sarah, so this information that's starting slowly to be provided, because the caller is clearly, it's a tough call for them to make. So can you talk us through what happens next?
Well, I was concerned about the delay that is being built in here, because the advice that was being given was talk to the boy, get his permission, talk to the parents, do a visit, then make the report. The problem is that might be done within a matter of hours, or it might not even be possible to achieve the same day. Then the advice given was, if the parents refuse to give permission and refuse to report this information, come back to me and I will phone the more senior lawyers and we will discuss what we do. Well, there is no discussion to be had about what we do, because what we do is absolutely crystal clear in the best safeguarding advice that is in this country, it is crystal clear that you report to a safeguarding team immediately. You don't have another delay while a lawyer has a conversation with lawyers that are probably not even in this country. And I suspect they're not, because I suspect it would be the European Lead Counsel or Salt Lake lawyers. You do not delay while you talk to them and they get back to you with a discussion about how you breach confidentiality given to you by an 11-year-old boy. You simply make clear to the 11-year-old boy that you want to make sure he is safe, that you believe him, you are grateful he has shared this with you, and this is what you are going to do, is talk to people who can help make sure that he's safe. So that is the first thing that really disappointed me, that there seemed to be some delay into safety. The other thing that
I'm just going to jump in again, just because we've got new people coming in constantly. Our wonderful friend from Protect the Children, Katie Moore. We love you, Katie. Thank you so much for all the work that you're doing. So what we need you to do, Katie, and anyone else who's joined us in the last few minutes, we need you to go to the chat, scroll up. You will find a link to a video that has just dropped on the internet, on YouTube. The Mormon World are going to be talking about this video. This is some audio of a call to the UK Safeguarding Helpline. We're not sure how long this video is going to stay up, so we want to talk about it urgently and make sure people are seeing it while they can. It's really important that you go and watch this video first before you listen to us. So stop this channel right now. You are not welcome here. We need you to go and watch the video, then come back, because we're breaking down what a safeguarding expert is telling us about the procedures of what happened in this instance of a call to the helpline in the UK. Sarah, can you pick up from there? Can you?
Yeah, and just to remind everybody, we're not speaking on behalf of the church. We don't do that, and neither would we wish to speak on behalf of the church, because we don't condone some of their safeguarding practices and policies. So we wouldn't wish to speak for you. We are speaking for ourselves. We're speaking as mothers, as grandmothers, and as women that have worked within the field of community advocacy, safeguarding, and with people. And that's what we're speaking about now. I was particularly concerned about the statement that was made to him, made to PD as bishop, by the helpline lawyer, that the risk is over, the harm has been done, the sleepover where this occurred is over. I am sorry. You cannot say that because there has been a single incident of abuse reported, perpetrated by a 12-year-old boy against an 11-year-old boy, when both boys are at church and this has happened, you cannot possibly deduce from a 10-minute phone call that the risk is over. How do you know the risk is over? That 12-year-old boy may be the victim of abuse, and that might be why he has perpetrated abuse. He may have perpetrated abuse against other children, and you may have only had the tip of the iceberg in the disclosure that you have heard from the 11-year-old boy. So there can be absolutely no confidence or credibility attached to the statement that the harm is over, the risk is over. Because
should the bishop be attempting to find that out? Should the bishop be attempting to ask questions? Could you elaborate a little bit on that?
It is not the bishop's job to ask questions or investigate or attempt to find out the truth, and it is absolutely not the bishop's job to speak to the 12-year-old boy who's alleged to have perpetrated this harm, or the 12-year-old boy's parents. It is a bishop's job to simply listen to the disclosure, make
we're losing Sarah's signal just ever so slightly, so we want to make sure that we get to hear everything that Sarah is saying really clearly. So I think we've got you back, Sarah. So could you say that last? I think it was just the last sentence that we missed.
Absolutely critical that the bishop's job is not to investigate. It is his job to simply thank the child for the information, pass it on to the authorities, and for him to maintain a written record of exactly what he has been told and what he has done with that information. And in time that is in different countries about how to handle this, more harm perpetrated. Risk is situational for children of this age. And the situation and the risk can change dramatically within a matter of minutes for children of this age. So actually, we don't know what's happening, do we? I was a little bit concerned that there was no question asked of the bishop of how do you think the parents in this situation may react? Do you think the 11-year-old boy who is a victim may be at risk of being punished by his parents for not having said no, for being in that situation? We don't know what the parents' background is. We don't know how the parents may react. We don't know how the parents of the...
Yeah, I think that's incredibly important, especially in this case, because we can only, judging by what we can hear, we have a bishop who is very, very nervous and is worried about the consequences of what might happen. Now, that was sort of first and quite forefront in my mind, apart from we're talking an awful lot here about soothing this bishop. And I'm not saying there isn't a place for that. That isn't important. But for me, I'm waiting to hear about, oh my goodness, we're making a call about someone that we're worried about. How quickly are we going to be able to establish that that child is safe and get correct advice? So obviously a procedure had to happen because the bishop calling was very, very nervous. But it led me to wonder, what are the circumstances around that? So is it possible that he is going to expect pushback from either sets of parents, that might be that might be very, very worrying, and is certainly part of the picture. And I heard a lot of support for his concerns sort of being soothed, but I didn't really get a lot of, well, what happens as a bishop if actually this was incredibly dangerous.
I also heard Bishop PD ask the question of, what if the boy doesn't give me permission? But I didn't hear an answer to that question. And I think that's really significant, because I think that would be a very real question that a bishop would answer. Well, what if the person asks me not to tell anybody? And what the answer should have come straight back to said, Bishop, it is going to be your responsibility to report this abuse, whether or not the child gives you consent to do so, because these are very young children and this has to be reported.
Yeah.
So it should have been made very clear. And so I think the question got asked and then it went immediately into something else. But I felt that the bishop hadn't had a accurate response to what was needed in that case. We also, just as a matter of interest to people, around about 30 to 40%, depending on kind of what studies you're looking at, of all sexual harm that is perpetrated on under 18-year-olds is perpetrated by other under 18-year-olds. So it's by far from a rare situation, but it is one that we find particularly difficult to manage and to respond to. It sounded a little bit too much to me, as though there was too little willingness to move very quickly to reporting and ensuring that these children were guarded, and much more time being given to discussion about, well, Bishop, you've got a solemn duty of confidentiality that your members will expect you to hold to.
Just a tiny bit. So while we just wait on the signal settling down a little bit, for the new people who have just come into the chat, again, we're just gonna repeat what we're saying throughout this video. If you have not, because we are live, so people are dropping in and out at different times. If you have not yet watched the video that we're talking about, we need you to scroll back up the chat. We're sharing it regularly, so just scroll back up to the top and you will find a link to a video that has just dropped in the past 20 minutes on YouTube. We need you to watch it. Priesthood Dispatches has uploaded. He gives you the full explanation and content behind it, so do watch from the start. And he shares this call to the church helpline here in the UK. We're talking about that call, but it is really important, because this video may not be up for long, that we talk about it now. Well, if you can watch it now, we need you to do it, because it may not be up for that long. Okay, Sarah, please continue.
Yeah, I think the other thing that we need to consider in here is these boys are at church together. There was no immediate information given from the helpline lawyer about how to manage the immediate risky situation that both boys might be together at a church meeting within the same week, Sunday, maybe even earlier than that. We don't know. There was no information given about what the bishop could do to have a conversation with the 12-year-old parents about actually what they were going to do, how they were going to manage that. And if the helpline lawyer is thinking, well, actually, that wasn't the time for that conversation because we needed to deal with the urgent reporting issues, then I would have expected him to have said, Bishop, there is going to be some ongoing concerns about having the 12-year-old boy, 11-year-old boy and both sets of parents together in the same environment in the ward building, certainly while the investigation is going on, and certainly till we have a better understanding of the impact on the 11-year-old boy and the future risks that the 12-year-old may pose. And so we will need to have a plan for how you're going to manage that, Bishop. We will need to discuss where the 12-year-old and his family can worship and be supported and have that fellowship of
and so again, we're
to
just
church every
waiting.
week with someone who's abused him.
We're having a little bit of drifting out of in and out of signal, just a little bit. These are the joys of going live late on a Saturday night when every kid in the UK is playing a new Harry Potter game, I would suspect. Okay. Clearly this is incredibly serious stuff, and if the church safeguarding helpline is doing what it says, you know, what best practice would be, I don't know. I would have expected those kind of things that you're mentioning. These are things that you've come up with in the space of 20 minutes since watching it, right? This is pretty basic stuff that you would expect.
Yeah, it's absolutely basic. Anybody dealing with safeguarding should know this stuff. It's not science. It absolutely is not rocket science. So
let's just say, sorry, Sarah, I know I keep jumping in, but just to make super clear. So for those asking, should you watch here or go to PD's channel first? That link is super important because it may not be up for long. Please watch there first. We love you and we appreciate you, but we will be here when you get back. And we are a lot more easy to catch up with than us have to hopefully find some transcription somewhere on the internet. I don't know if someone out there would end up saving it somehow, but let's not take the risk. If you can watch it now, please jump on and watch. Sorry, Sarah, please continue.
I just want to do a quick recap of where we're at now. Then we've got a situation of an 11-year-old boy that has been sexually abused by a 12-year-old boy within the church environment. The advice given by the helpline is to ask the 11-year-old boy to share the information with his parents, do a home visit to the parents, get their consent to report. If their consent is not forthcoming, to be able to turn this.
Yeah, I'm so sorry about this. We are having some real problems with Sarah's Wi-Fi signal tonight. I am super sorry about this, but you know what? We will patiently wait it out because, like I say, the more time we spend here talking about it, the more time you have to go and listen to the video. So please go make sure. Excellent. For those who have watched, I am delighted. We are talking about a safeguarding expert's views on how that call went. So we're definitely seeing there are elements which we've noted are fairly positive, but Sarah's highlighting several concerns of things that have not been mentioned or are not being addressed, that possibly we could term as maybe a failing to, not necessarily that the person's withholding information, but maybe that they don't really know or they're not fully aware of what this best practice could look like. Sarah, please pick up from here.
Well, I think the key issues that we need to get around here is that there has to be an understanding of the extent of under 18 abuse and under 18-year-old abuse. We have to have somebody answering that helpline or somebody immediately available to the person answering the helpline who can give the absolute accurate advice about reporting, safeguarding and managing risk and meeting victim needs. In this case, we have got multiple people that will have needs that have to be met. We have an 11-year-old boy who has been the victim of sexual abuse. He needs to be in therapeutic care. He needs to be being supported with therapeutic services around him. His parents are likely to be distressed, unhappy, worried, What do they do? What does this mean for their child? How do they respond to this situation? How do they feel? What are their emotions? Because all of those get in the way of meeting the needs of the victim. So there should be some advice and information given as to where those parents are going to access support and information from to enable them to do a good job of caring for their child. We need to make sure that there is no delay in reporting. It really concerns me that there's too much delay in getting this reported, being built into a system where we may have an 11-year-old that could face further abuse, or a 12-year-old boy that could be abusing other children as well. So I think those are absolutely critical things. Then we come to the 12-year-old boy, who is the responsibility of the bishop because he's a member of the same ward and entitled to love and support and care as a child. He needs to have his needs met. Now, hopefully professionals will be involved. They'll step in, they'll put therapeutic services in place, they'll put safety plan, they'll put some parenting work, they'll put the things in place that should be there. But the bishop has got to work out how he's going to respond to that 12-year-old boy. How's he going to support him? How's he going to work with that boy and his parents? What longer term plans need to be made about these families being together in a church environment, and how can that be implemented in practice? And all of these are things that I would expect the person answering the helpline to either have at their fingertips because they know, or if they don't have that at their fingertips, be able to give immediate, accurate advice on the most rapid and effective way to report abuse, and agree a time to speak with the bishop again to talk through some of these issues around meeting the spiritual and the emotional and the social needs of everybody involved in this. You've also got the potential in a ward for something like this to actually split and cause a little bit of division within the ward, with some people siding with the perpetrator and their family, some people siding with the victim and the family. And we see that when abuse is between children. We see that with people thinking, well, it was a bit one bit of the other. We see these really complex thoughts going on for people. You also see people thinking, we know that 12-year-old, he's a lovely boy, there's no way he'd do something like this, and finding it very difficult to believe. So there has to be some understanding about how is the bishop going to explain and manage and talk about something that, with the best will in the world, these things can get round.
Yeah, as Sarah's signal's dropping out just ever so slightly again, while we wait for it to settle back down, just a reminder, if you have not yet watched PD's video, please go to Priesthood Dispatches channel. We've put the quick link in the chat. You need to watch this video first while it's still on the internet. We're not sure how long it will be able to stay up there, so please watch the video and then you can come back and we're going to talk about it. So one of the biggest things that I had noticed that Sarah has already alluded to was there was kind of almost an assumption that the incident, that things were safe, that things at this moment in time were, the emergency had passed, that it was an incident and it was, although current, it had happened. And it took quite a while, I think. I know I have no training. The only experience I have is just sort of in this space and what we've seen as being presented as best practice. But I would imagine the very first question that I would want to ask, being on the other end of a helpline, is just the very first question. Bishop, I know you're nervous, but can you tell me at this moment, is there a child at risk right now? And following that up with whatever the answer is going to look like, Bishop, if you believe there is a child at risk right now, you need to call 999. And that eventually, this great advice. I mean, that's the advice. If you're worried about a child, call the emergency police number in your area. The emergency police number. It took a while for that to be said.
It took a while. That was not said until nearly towards the end of the phone call. First of all, there was a discussion about getting permission from the boys, getting permission from the boys' parents. If that wasn't forthcoming, come back to me. I'll talk to more senior lawyers and we'll decide how we take this forward. No. Sorry, church, but no. what you do is you make sure that that information is given right there and then to the safeguarding board, to the safeguarding team in your local authority. If you don't know the details, then it's easily Googled. Put in the county that you live in the UK, such as put in, I don't know, Staffordshire Children's Safeguarding Board, and it will come up with the phone numbers and information that you need and that you require to make this report. So the key things that need to be looked at here is there's a problem that the information on how to report abuse and phone numbers that are needed and training for bishops is not so adequately provided that this bishop knew exactly what he needed to do. In an environment where we have robust and effective safeguarding policies and procedures and training, the bishop should know that the first thing he had to do was to report this abuse to the authorities, that when he spoke to the 11-year-old boy, he should have said at that time, I have to share this information with people who can help make you safe. I'm going to talk to them, and when I've spoken with them, I will let you know what's going to happen, but we will make sure you are safe. And I'm going to talk to your mum and dad because we need to make sure you're safe. And that phone call should then have been made. After that phone call has been made to the authorities, then you call the abuse helpline and you say, I have reported this abuse. This is what I have done. This is why I have reported this abuse. I have a copy of my notes. I can let you have a copy of them for your records. And then there should be the discussion with the abuse helpline about all of the other things that need to happen. How pastoral care is given to both sets of parents, how pastoral care is given to both of the children involved in this case, and how any potential risks and harm could be managed. And then last but not least, I would like to see some emotional support being given to bishops that are having to deal with this, because for some bishops this is going to be incredibly distressing. For some it's going to push buttons around their own abuse because they've experienced that, and it's going to be very difficult for them to have that possible trigger. For some, it will come out of the blue. It will be something they've never heard about, they know nothing about, and they've got no experience of whatsoever. So there's a need for bishops to be given some pastoral care and support themselves when they're having to deal with an abuse situation. So I think what we're seeing here is a few gaps that Jane, we have been trying to talk to our leaders about for 6 months now. We've been trying to say these are some of the basics you need to get in place. Adequate training for bishops so they know what they need to do. And you reduce delays significantly when you've got well-trained bishops and know what to do when faced with abuse. Resources that you can immediately send people to, link people with, put people in contact with, and those should cover parents of victims, victims themselves, and also parents or people supporting anyone who's perpetrated abuse. We should make sure that information is displayed prominently in all our chapels so everybody knows exactly what they should do if they are concerned about a child that is being abused. And we should make sure that our bishops are given pastoral care and support to deal with some of this stress, and that there is somebody able to formulate a safety plan and a risk management plan to ensure that the likelihood of harm is reduced in the future. And that's kind of what I would expect.
Yeah, there are a couple of really important points that we have still to hit, which we will be able to do quite briefly. But again, we want to remind you, in the comments, we have shared a link to Priesthood Dispatches YouTube channel. He has recently dropped a video where he talks about a conversation, where he shares a conversation that he had with the UK Church Safeguarding Helpline. We are talking about that conversation. We need you to have a look at that video right now before you listen to the rest of what we are saying, and then come back and join us later. You can watch the rebroadcast. We will be here for you if you want to talk. PD is in the chat with us, and we are thankful for your work. Okay, something that didn't happen then, you alluded to that later on. How does the call end, and what would you expect to happen at the end of the call or next after the call?
I would expect there to be an agreed time and place when the helpline lawyer answering the phone and the bishop are going to connect again and talk. That absolutely, my understanding of how this ended is it just came to an end with the bishop. Helpline lawyer just said, "Oh, I need to know where you are, Bishop," but Bishop wasn't giving him where he was or his name, but he did have his phone number. So I would expect the lawyer to say, "I will phone you tomorrow, Bishop, and we will touch base. We'll have a discussion about how you're talking to the boy and the parents have gone. What response did you get when you reported to the authorities?" Because the church also need to have a safeguarding plan in place as to what they do should a bishop make a report to a local safeguarding board and be met with an absolute idiot who shouldn't be in the job and doesn't take it seriously. Because unfortunately, these people pop up everywhere. And the church need to know that if they report abuse and they don't feel that they have done a good job on it, responding to it, then the church need to know how they escalate those concerns. And they don't just say, "Oh, well, they made the decision," that they need to know how to challenge, confront and escalate that decision making. So all of those need to be part of the church's plan for abuse.
And our focus has always been stressing how well-intentioned the church safeguarding process is, how effective lots of things are. The fact that there is a helpline is a great resource. We've talked a little bit about annotations in the past, that there, the problems with them, and yet the fact that we have this worldwide alarm system. So great things are being done. The fact that if new processes or systems are put in place, we have people who will actively right now change those change everything that they know and do what the church is asking in this case. To go from the church, because of its people and the theological underpinning, which is, about the safety of children and where that is in Jesus Christ's priority list, makes it really clear that if we could take safeguarding from what we believe is problematic, which is certainly well-intentioned. But even if you think, so many people listen to this call. I'm thinking, oh, he seemed like a really nice job. He's like a really nice guy. I think that was a good job. And then what happens is we drill down into it because we have experts like Sarah who have seen what happens in the other end of these processes, who can point out, okay, yes, this is good. But there's a problem in this area when we make certain assumptions or when we forget to look at this thing. So we really need to hear these voices of experts in this space. Now, we do have them in the church. Sarah is a member of the church.
We do.
I think you've mentioned this once or twice in the whole time that you've been a member of the church. And we've talked about this being a really exciting time, that for the first time across Mormonism, members of the church, ex-members of the church, people who have, real difficulties and challenges with the church, people who feel, are very TBM and love the church and don't hear criticism about it. Suddenly everyone is in this space saying, yeah, we really are behind this. We want to do better. So I want to stress that we are very, very proud of what PD has done to allow us to have this conversation, because without really knowing how the Safeguarding Helpline works, we can't do what we're doing and critique it. Good job, but there are improvements that we would recommend, that we are looking for as members of the church. Sarah, do you have any final comments about the video itself?
I absolutely applaud PD. He's great. He's a friend. I love him. I'm so grateful that he's actually made himself vulnerable enough to be able to put this out there to enable us to have the discussion. And people, be kind. He deserves it and he needs it. I think it's great we've got this, because we're now able to drill down into some of the things that the helpline could be doing to be a better place. I believe that the person manning this helpline is a good man, a man with a good heart, a man that wants to do his best for God, and a man that wants to do his best for children, and his heart and his intent is absolutely right in wanting to protect children. The problem is this church does not invest heavily enough in good quality external training that provides the people that are at the sharp end of this with the tools that they need to do the job. And that's what I'd say to the church. Come on, get the tools for the job out there to the people that are doing the work at the coalface.
So we could spend, and you know what, we have spent, let's be honest, we have spent so much of our time, respectfully said with love, but it's late, I'm a Glaswegian, the non-filtered version. We spent a lot of time blowing smoke up the asses of church leaders and lawyers, right? We have. We don't want you to feel like we are threatening or that we have some agenda. You know what? People are going to believe what they believe. We love the church. We are members of the church. We have got 21st century saints who are not members of the church, but who are invested in it because they have family members in the church. I want to say directly to anyone who is listening to this who may have misguidedly be thinking that PD is sort of making some attempt to bring down the church. First of all, I want to really stress the video itself. I know a lot of thought went into that. The video itself, when you're speaking about it, you speak about it with respect because this is someone's story. This is him. He experienced this. You honor that. We expect that of you. As members of the church, you honor that. PD's motivations in doing this, you know what, he'll speak for himself, and I'm excited that we're gonna talk with the rest of the Brit Vengers this Sunday night because big stuff is happening that we really, really need to talk about. It feels like every week something bigger and bigger happens. But what I will make absolutely clear is in talking about the work of PD or any other individual who stands in this space to seek after keeping children safe, then 21st century saints, whoever the hell you are, even if you are Satan himself, if you are calling for children to be kept safe, then we will stand with you. I am pretty sure we have scriptures around where goodness comes from. And if you doubt that, then shame on you.
And if the work of anybody in a safeguarding space can be discounted because they don't believe every single thing this church ever teaches or talks about, then that's a shameful state of affairs. If we want to dismiss anyone working in a safeguarding space because of where their faith is at, then there's a problem.
Absolutely.
There's a problem.
Absolutely.
And we'll come to this more on Sunday night.
We're going to talk more about this on Sunday. So the main message, go watch PD's video while it is still on the internet. It's important, if you're a member of the church, that you are listening, because you know what happens when people are victims of abuse in the church? Statistically, they leave. If you don't listen to the lessons, the experiences, the traumas, their voices, then we're not safeguarding. Without victims' voices at the centre of it, victims' voices that we deem worthy of listening to, then we're not safeguarding. So this is an amazing job in letting us have this conversation. So we honour your work, PD. Again, please go and watch PD's channel. This video, it just might not be up for that long. We're asking that you talk about it, that you share it. Let me tell you, the moment we start sharing things like this, that's when people start talking and disclosing their experiences. This is why we've arrived at this moment. We all arrived here together. We've seen so many things done over from the September 6th to Sam Young. All of those things that inevitably have ended up in excommunication and negativity and breakdowns in communication. I don't believe for 1 second that those things are inevitable, because we are all here. We're all here and we're all saying this. The church will eventually, it's going to happen. It's going to get safeguarding right. What we would really like to do is to make that process faster, because Sarah has this information. With a quick phone call, those procedures could be implemented and sorted right now.
One one final plea. If any of you are in a position to do so, please ask your bishops to get safeguarding sorted. Put a letter in the post, write to your MP. If you are in the UK, write to your MP and ask your Member of Parliament to contact church in their constituency and ask the church what they are doing about safeguarding. That upsets them and that makes them listen. And we have to push. We're at the where we are when we are looking at real life cases of abuse where children are being left at risk. We absolutely have to quit being super nice and super kind, and we have to start saying this is time to get this right.
Yeah, and we will keep being super nice and super kind, and also tell you that we have to
because we are super nice and super kind.
I do it with my kids, do it with my husband. I'm going to do it with the church that I love. Yes, if there is something that we can fix. I don't go to church every Sunday and hear messages about being better without actually taking something on board and thinking, oh yeah, you know what, as a people we can be better. I have that expectation. So yeah, listen to PD's video. It is super important. I'm going to share this link one last time. Now, if you're sticking around just for an extra second, I'm going to tell you what's happening on Sunday night. We are going to be chatting with Nemo and the rest of the Brit Vengers again over on Nemo, the Mormons channel. Our star of tonight, our hero of tonight, PD, is going to be there too. So do show him some love and make sure that you're there to support him. And you know what? We need you too. So I'm going to make a quick statement right now that we will be sharing across our social media pages. We have a lot of things to say over the next few days. But just quickly on a lot of you know that we recently sent some letters to bishops across the United Kingdom. Those letters that we sent were all hand addressed, using information that is publicly available on the church's Meeting House Locator website. So I don't think there's been a suggestion that there's been a data breach, but certainly I think a few people have asked, how did we get bishops' addresses? So what seems to happen here in the UK, and we'd had this discussion before we'd sent these letters out, what seems to have happened is that because the buildings of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints are generally closed midweek, some don't have post boxes, some do. Very often there is a mail redirect in place. Now that could be because your local postman knows that a member of the church lives very nearby and will deliver mail there. We certainly know that's happened in a couple of instances here. But more commonly, what happens is there's an arrangement where very simply, in the same way as if you were moving home, you can have an arrangement with the post office, with the Royal Mail, so that they will just redirect any mail to go to a bishop's home address. And that seems to be what generally happens. So if any bishop, and we know, people have sort of wondered, how has a letter from 21st Century Saints ended up at my home address? We can tell you right now, we don't know the home addresses of any bishops. We have no way of getting that. We wouldn't, even if we had thought in a mindless moment that might be a good idea. We just wouldn't do it. We contacted the listed business address for every church, and like I say, every single chapel in the United Kingdom and Stake Centre is listed on the church's official Latter-day Saint LDS Meeting House Locator. Did someone genuinely sit finding all 300 and however many meeting houses? Yes. Did someone also handwrite every single one of them? Yeah, it may boggle the mind to people who have some lawyers who've expressed concerns about how that happened, and we will formally put this in writing to you, elders. We are thankful for you bringing it to attention. We would bring to your attention that you put this information out there on the internet. We just took the time to lick the stamps and use the ink. So that's what happened. So we want to assure all bishops and leaders that there's no data breach. We don't know what your home addresses are. So that was just something really important. And again, we'll put it in writing. We'll stick up on the website. Sarah, sorry, you were going to say something. Oh, okay.
Yeah, just one final comment from me. I just want to reiterate the reassurance that we have given previously to every bishop that has reached out to us since we sent letters, that we know how difficult that is for you. And we absolutely 100% guarantee you confidentiality. We will not disclose the stake, the ward, your name, or anything that would be an identifiable feature to anybody. So you can rest assured that no matter what else has transpired, we will maintain that confidentiality.
And we continue.
And I say that because so many bishops have reached out to us, and I don't want any of them to feel that
we
could be a problem.
To work with bishops and leaders and members who are concerned, and people who have been victims of abuse within the church or outside of the church who have perhaps sought pastoral support there. We signpost to reputable organisations for support. So and I think ultimately, and I guess I kind of mean this about PD too, anyone who knows us and knows our work and knows knows what our approach is, doesn't doubt our intention, because you all know who we are. We don't filter, we don't lie, we tell you what we're thinking. For the most part, it's very, very rare that there's something that we do that we maybe haven't told you guys that there's something that we're going to do first. So we're very open. We are transparent about everything. So any doubts you have, well, we're more than happy to engage. I guess we just ask that our reputation speaks for itself, in the same way as we know who PD is, and we love PD. We might not share the same, our faith might not look the same anymore, but you know what? He is amazing, and he is one of the best, spiritually supportive as a friend. There, anytime, literally, we can make a call, and PD will always pick up, despite the fact that PD has an incredibly, busy life himself and does incredible work. So, I just want to honour your work, PD. Again, go watch his video, please. We love and appreciate your audience. Thank you so much for joining us so last minute. We will be back this Sunday night with the rest of the Brit Avengers. We're going to be talking about... I'm going to... Shall I say the L word? What? We're going to be talking about...
say the L word. Say the L word.
We're going to be talking about the lawyers. Good night, everyone.
And can I just remind everyone, Jane, Jesus had trouble with lawyers as well.
Absolutely. Okay, good night, everyone.
I'm off for a midnight feast now. Having
it's
been
almost
dragged from my bed.
Having
been dragged from my bed an hour and a half ago.
Okay, good night, audience.
Good night,
we love you. And as always, we bless your journeys.